Hello and welcome to episode 320 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now, this episode for me today is huge. It doesn't get much better for me personally or bigger than when you get to interview one of your all-time favourite bands. When I interview bands on Mark and Me, I always ask the question about what albums change people's lives, what music performances change people's lives, and this is mine. Yes, today I'm joined by the amazing Ben and Chris from one of my all-time favourite bands, Silverchair. I've interviewed Ben only a few months ago, but this time round he's brought Chris with him, and we get to focus this time around on the band's official book, Love and Pain, which is out now and tells the story of Chris and Ben from Silverchair and all their journeys along the music industry over the last sort of 20 plus years, and it's absolutely brilliant. You'll also find out on today's interview that I contributed to this book. Actually, I sat with the writer and we went through lots of questions as a fan of the band and what sort of directions I wanted the book to go in. So it's an absolute honour to know that these two and myself get to break down and talk in great detail about the writing of this amazing book. I remember when I was growing up at school, a good friend of mine back then called Ben Davis got this album called Frog Stomp. I literally knew nothing about it, but it had this iconic white cover with just a simple bright green frog on it. And honestly, this just changed my life. Many of the bands I was in at school and bands around me were always doing Silverchair covers at our school gigs. And it was just part of our growing up. Like Nirvana, like Pearl Jam, Silverchair for me cemented the reason that I wanted to be in a band. They were the band that I got to see many times at festivals and UK dates. And I've worshipped them ever since. They've evolved like no other band. I think Neon Ballroom is a true masterpiece. I think that the music that they've done and the way they keep growing as musicians and the way they mature through their sound is just unique. And there's not another band out there, and I don't think there ever will be, like Silverchair. I don't want to go on too much right now because the interview's an hour long and it's great and that's a story within itself. So I think the best thing to do right now is to get straight to it. So here's me and Ben and Chris from Silverchair talking all things music. So Ben and Chris, welcome to the Mark and Me podcast.
Thanks for having us, man.
I was waiting for you to go, Chris. G'day, Mark. Thanks for having us.
What I love to do on this podcast, guys, is take it right back to the very start. Now, Ben, you've already been on the podcast and it's amazing to have you back on, but Chris, this is your first time. So, Chris, can you tell me when you were growing up, what was that first album that you remember buying or that was given to you as a kid that made you absolutely fall in love with music?
I guess it was sort of like flicking through Dad's record collection, really. I remember old vinyl of, all the classics of Deep Purple and Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, things like that.
Come on, mate. Just pick one.
Well, let's go Led Zeppelin. It just instantly grabbed my attention. There was just, I was hooked.
Ben, you were the same, weren't you? You were pretty much Led Zeppelin from the start and James Brown, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I was same as Chris. I think, and the way I describe it, I think as when you're discovering music, it's like you're searching around a toy box. And it's not until you reach a certain level of musical maturity, this is for musicians or non-musicians, I think, that you really lock into that sound that you just fall in love with. And yeah, I was the same. Once I got to that certain point where I really knew what I liked, it was definitely Led Zeppelin.
Music kind of changed for me when I first went to my live gig. One of my first ever shows was Green Day. It was on their Dookie tour, and I thought they were just unbelievable. I was probably about 13, and I just couldn't believe how good they sounded. I couldn't believe there was only 3 people on stage making that much noise. But Did you have a cool first gig, or was it quite an embarrassing one that you don't tell people?
One of my earliest memories of seeing a band was UMI in Sydney, and it was probably the first time like heard a band's music and then gone and seen them live, and was just yeah, I guess just jaw dropping. It was awesome. And we got to sit up on the side of stage and watch them. It was unbelievable. It was mind blowing at that age. I think we might have been like 14 or something.
Was yours cool, Ben, or are you going to try to kind of change it last minute now to sound cool?
Yeah, go on.
I actually think I remember that gig, the UMI gig, but I wouldn't. The first memory that I have of really like being at a rock concert was actually in Newcastle, and we played on the bill. We supported a local band in Newcastle called the Screaming Jets, that are very classic rock, and they're from Newcastle as well, so they're hometown. And I quite like the drummer, and I remember seeing him walking through the crowd, and I was very excited that I even just got to get a glimpse of him wandering through the crowd. But yeah, that was probably the first one for me. Just seeing an audience just going ballistic over a band, and also they were a great, they were a really tight band. They were a really good live band as well. So that was probably the one that sticks out for me in terms of like a first gig that was quite memorable.
What I usually do on the podcast is, if it's any guest, an actor or a director or a band, is I like to then find out how they came about to be. So with Silverchair, I think because we're going to focus today a lot on the new book, there's no point in talking about how you started out and what your first gigs were like, because we know that, and we also know from the book how your experiences are. But what I do want to know from both of you is, at what point you decided, let's put pen to paper and let's get our story out there. Was it off the back of the fact that Dan had done a podcast and kind of started to tell his story that you felt like maybe it's our time now to talk?
No, I'd actually considered writing a book back in 2018. Jackie, my wife, wrote a book with a publishing company in Australia called Hachette, and we just became really close to one of the people that worked there. And I had a conversation with her in 2018, and that it kind of fizzled out. It didn't really turn into anything. But the real trigger point for me was when my twin boys were born in 2021, and yeah, and I mean, and that was all. That was pre anything that Dan did with his record or his podcast or anything. So it was purely just out of wanting to tell my story from my perspective, that my boys could read, and not go onto Google and kind of piece together some kind of story from clickbait articles online. I really wanted them to know, the experiences and the incredible time that I shared with Daniel and Chris in the band. And I did speak to Chris about it quite a while ago, and he made it pretty clear at the time that he was only really interested in doing something that was all three of us. But I guess once I guess it became a reality and I chatted to Chris about it, then at that point I went to him and said, hey, look, do you want to be part of the book? And even at that time, he's had the same kind of attitude, I guess. And then I'll never forget the day. I was sitting having my car washed actually in Newcastle, and I was having a coffee, and I said, hey, look, I just had an inkling that he was still, there was a curiosity there. And I was like, hey, look, there's still, like, I've just started the process of this book of working with Ali, and, that if you want to get on board, there's still the door is wide open. You just, if you want to write it together, like, let's go. And then Chris, over to you.
Yeah, well, it was probably, I don't know, maybe 48 hours after that phone call that I flicked Ben a note just saying, yeah, I'd love to get on board and collaborate on it. That once it sort of sat with me and I thought deeply about it, it was, there's so much more to it other than just the band. Given our friendship spans for the better part of 40 odd years, and we're still such great mates today. So there was so much more to it rather than just purely focusing on our time in the band together. And given just a few speed humps in the road with some health stuff, life just seemed too short really to turn down such opportunity.
I think what's strange is obviously Dan's been quite public on social media. He's had albums out. Ben, you've had music releases from yourself as a solo artist, and you're very active on Instagram and stuff. But Chris, it seemed like you were just disappeared. Like, we didn't know what you were doing in your life. You'd never been active on any social media, and you've been completely out of the kind of fame for, over 10 years. And it was incredible just to see a picture of you again with Ben and be like, okay, there he is. He's around. He's healthy. He's on board. It was so good because no one knew what you were doing anymore.
Yeah. Look, it was quite a deliberate attempt at myself to, I guess, just I don't know. I was just interested in living a pretty quiet existence, and just I don't know. I don't know. I was quite content just in just keeping a pretty low profile and another interest as well. Like I guess I sort of moved away from music essentially and got into opening bars and restaurants and I guess life just took me in a different direction.
And I was saying, Ben, before you came on today, I've been talking to Chris about how I've been kind of reading the book, and I've had the audiobook on for the last few days, and it's, nearly 7 hours. But what really works and keeps me completely engaged in it is the format, the fact that it's like a diary entry. So you can be listening and hearing you talking about 1995, and then suddenly it switches to Chris talking about 2001, and then it's you back to 1998. Was that a conscious choice between you guys or the publisher or the writer to kind of make it more like a journal instead of a from the very start and then it goes all the way to the present day?
Yeah, that was a bit of that was a choice from myself that unfortunately just during I don't know, maybe fortunately during the creative process, I'd kind of already started down a path before Chris came on board, but thankfully he was kind of into the idea. So there was two things that happened before I started writing, before Chris came on board. I'd watched a documentary on Netflix that I'm sure a lot of people would have seen, called The Last Dance, about the Chicago Bulls.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was a great documentary, but I noticed in it how they did that, the shift between the timeline, that it wasn't linear, like it just kept shifting all over the place. And I also noticed it on a few other kind of documentaries they seem to be on Netflix a bit. And I just felt like it was just a really nice way to keep the story interesting. And I thought just for the Silverchair and eventually both of our personal stories, like it was just a nice way to keep a lot of momentum. And it also helped in the book as well, I think, toward the end when there's some stuff that's a bit more challenging, that you can sprinkle in some lighter moments and some, so it doesn't feel kind of heavy or a bit darker at the end maybe. So I kind of told Ali straight up, I said, this isn't linear. Let's not do it linear. Let's move around have the timeline move around. And it was funny when I first mentioned it to her, she was like, "How are we going to do that?" And I was like, "I don't know. That's your
That's
job.
your job, yeah.
You can figure out how that's going to work." And then the other really another I guess the diary entry, like where it's like there's no real chapters and there's no real, like, some parts are like one page, and there's other parts are like several pages or however long, is the boys, my two baby boys were, I don't know, maybe 6 months old when I probably younger, and I was reading them a book called 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne, and I just noticed that, like, in this book, that there was no real, like they were just thoughts. Like, it was like when he was writing the book, he was like, right, well, if I need to, if the story arc at this point of the overall story just needs 2 pages, that's all I'm going to give it. And I said that to Ali as well right from the start. I said, look, let's not worry about chapters. No chapters. Like, let's just keep it really free flowing. Like, if the moment just needs a page, like, that's all it needs to be, then we can move on. And look, and to be honest with you, it was risky. Who knew it was going to work? Like, we could have got to the end of it and it was a disaster and we have to start again. But
I suppose
thankfully it kind of works.
It does work really well, and it keeps you engaged because, like you said, some are literally, when you guys are reading, it can be just a page for you guys can feel like 45 seconds. Then it's like, oh, it switched to Chris again now. Now he's going to talk for 3 or 4 minutes. It works so well as an audiobook, and because you guys are doing it as well, it feels even more personal, like you're reading your diary to us. And yeah, I've spent a good 7.5 hours with you guys this week, and it's kept me engaged, and I've not listened to any music. I've just been like, right, back to Ben and Chris, so it is working.
Awesome,
Yeah,
man.
cool.
I suppose what I'm really curious about is how to whittle it down to make it a realistic sized book. And Ali shared with me the whiteboard that you guys had in your meeting room, and it was, all brainstorming, and it had loads of different like topics. But was there a conscious choice to keep it to a certain amount? Because I'm sure there's many stories that both of you wished had seen the light, but must have been like, look, we just can't. This can't be like a 10,000 page book.
I guess it just naturally, like, all that really sort of the key points will always just rise to the surface essentially. And we spent hours with Ali pouring and purging, and I'm sure there's miles of stuff on the cutting room floor, but she, I guess, worked her wizardry in pulling it all into shape.
I mean, Chris, you couldn't have been more brave with this release of this book because, like you said, you made a conscious choice not to be active on these social media. You put down the bass guitar. You've been doing stuff with a family and obviously opening restaurants and going down that kind of avenue. But it only came to light when I watched your 2-part documentary on Australian TV, which I was lucky enough to watch on YouTube, that you actually came out and told the world about your cancer and heart attack. And I think you didn't just kind of step back in a little bit and be like, oh yeah, I'm happy to talk about Silverchair. You've given the fans more than they could have ever have asked for, but you've not hold back. You've kind of given yourself to everyone again, and I think you've been so brave to tell that story when no one knew, so you could have just kept it a secret.
Yeah, I guess it's the commitment I made to myself and to Ben, just to be extremely open and honest through this whole process, and because otherwise, unless you're prepared to go there, you're probably not going to do the project. You're going to do the project a disservice if you're not willing to, lean in and just, blow the lid off essentially. So that was sort of my approach, and I feel very safe working with Ben now in this environment as well. And yeah, I guess there's no dots left to join. That's for sure.
And
um,
Ben, you did the same, Ben. Like you told everyone about you and your alcohol problems and your anxiety. And, some books I've read of autobiographies of bands, they've just been polished and want to come across looking like a rock god. But you guys were happy to say, look, we fucked up. We made huge mistakes. We got ourselves in really bad places. And I think that's really important because it tells the real story. And you've titled the book Love and Pain. It's not love and success or love and victory. There was a lot of pain along the journey. And the alcohol stuff sounds like, in hindsight, like horrendous when you could look back at it. I suppose at the time it's not as bad, but now you can reflect. It seems like you've done so well to come out of that dark place.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, I do find it's funny because Chris and I have been on a bit of a book tour at the moment, and I always feel like it's a bit weird talking about alcoholism and anxiety, considering what Chris has gone through. Because it's just I just don't think they're very comparable. They're different. They're different
Yeah,
journeys.
they're different. Yeah, you can't compare. Um,
It's still valid.
doesn't make it any. Yeah, that's right. Less.
I
of
think
a
everyone
challenge
has
in
their
life.
own challenges, and you give them what you've got. And I suppose, as bad as it is, and they're not measurable. Ben, you've had issues and problems, and Chris, you've had horrendous times, but you've both come out, even whatever the problems were, you've both come out kind of out the dark place with some light, and you've both now been able to not celebrate those things, but isn't it great that you're both here to tell that story now, and it didn't go a different path, and we're talking about you as someone that maybe not here anymore. I think it's incredible that us three are sharing time today, looking back
Yeah,
at what you
I
guys have
think
been
there's
through.
something there to be celebrated. I think, there's still like some amazing times in the band that we shared together, and the fact we're still fantastic mates today, that's worth celebrating.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that's yeah. There is something even just through the process of the Australian story and doing the book and the tour, to kind of reflect on, the book is kind of now part of our story and our friendship. And to kind of it almost gives you more perspective again, and to step back and look at our lives now and go, we are probably closer than we were even in the band, and we've both got, incredible partners. We've both got beautiful children, and we've kind of worked through that. I think we've both put a lot of work in, like personal work on ourselves. But to be able to look back and go, to be able to look where we are now and look back, like you're so incredibly thankful, that we're in the position that we are now. And that's, I think that's where, within the book as well, like that's where all the love comes from, and yeah, it's a really nice, and life can throw anything at you at any time, but it is nice to reflect and look back and, I guess, smell the roses a bit and go, we had and we've had some incredible times and some challenges along the way, but all in all, we're incredibly lucky.
How does it feel now when you're both, I suppose, kind of back on tour, even though it's not a rock and roll tour where you're drinking every night and going on stage, but you are out there meeting the fans, taking a lot of time to do these Q&As and these book tours? Does it feel like a real nice trip down memory lane, seeing how much the fans have embraced it because they've missed you so much?
It is really comforting, and um, and mind blowing at the same time. The response from people that have been coming out to the Q&As, it just goes to show how much love there is for the band still out there, and just how loyal they are, and forever grateful for that. I mean, the response has been the people have just been amazing.
I think what I've noticed, and this was always going to come, and I'm sure you guys weren't oblivious and expected it, but you are always going to get a bit of a backlash, and you're always going to get some people on there saying, we want Silverchair back together. We want to see another gig. Why don't you talk to Dan? Why is Dan not in the book? And I wondered, because you're now both active on Instagram and you're promoting this book, have you bothered to kind of read the comments and all the feedback? Because there's a bit of a divide. There's a lot of positive. There's a lot of positive comments. There's a lot of people embracing this book, but there are still those idiots and those trolls that are still always going to be on there saying, this should have been with Dan, and fuck you guys, this should have been all three of you. And I suppose, do you take any note of that, or do you just kind of keep it positive and kind of celebrate this book as for me, a very positive experience of Silverchair?
Yeah, look, I've made a conscious effort to stay away from the comments and online, and I mean, you can't completely stay away from it. You do see some of it, and generally it's always been really positive and uplifting. And I guess for anyone that has their opinion, that like if it's negative, like they just don't really know the story, and they probably just don't really know the full scope of the story, and that's okay. I think we've made a really, Chris and I have made and we've spoken about this, like we've made a really conscious effort to enjoy this process. We don't want to be bogged down with negativity and people kind of, and people can have their opinions. That's totally fine. It doesn't mean that we have to agree, or I have to agree with it, or we have to agree with it. There was three guys in Silverchair, and Chris and I, we have every right to tell our story, how we saw it. And but yeah, look, I think like we do lean into the love. There were some challenges, but we've made a really conscious effort to make the whole experience, like the online, at the tour, on the tour, just positive, because that's kind of where we are in life. There's no use getting bogged down in negativity and people just, I don't know. It's just, I just stay away from it. It's just, I don't know. It just sucks your energy. And it's funny how, like, I do find sometimes it's like the naughty kid in the classroom, right? Like, for some reason, like if you can read 100 beautiful messages online of people that are, genuinely, they get the sentiment of the book, but there might be one person there that's trolling and being really nasty and negative for no good reason, and that kind of sticks to your brain like some phlegm for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know if it's human nature, but so yeah, I think it's just best to stay away from it, and just let people know that it's out there, and enjoy the process, because how many times are you going to write a book? For some people, it likes it. For us,
I suppose, Ben, you're not the only person, dude, because even though I'm not on the scale of Silverchair, my podcast is doing really well in the UK and it's getting quite a success. And I'll read reviews and I'll go on to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and I love the feedback, and now I've launched YouTube. But if there's one person, even though there's thousands of people that listen, the one person that's hit a 1 star, I'm like, what did I do? Like, what did I do to you Is it really a 1 star? Is it really that bad? Like, I want to find you and know this person. Just sit and have a beer and say, what was it that made it so bad?
Yeah, I actually sometimes think to myself like these, like the keyboard warriors, like there must be a reality show in that where you actually get them to sit in front of the person, and
Oh,
you
that's
know
amazing.
they can be so brave when you're sitting behind a keyboard. But it's like, okay, cool. Well, say it to my face, and we can have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be quite
But
confronting.
yeah, I don't know. I don't. It's
I'm
not.
copywriting
It
that.
is.
That's going to be my new show. It's going to be, the troll uncovered.
Yeah. Look.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, remember the show on MTV? I think it was called Cheaters or something. They used to like.
Yes.
It's kind of like that, but for trolls.
Well, something good is going to come from this because I'm going to launch that. I'm going to get sponsorship, and you guys can be on the first episode. It'll be Silverchair meets the trolls. This is brilliant. I'm going to host it, and we're going to honestly, it'll be brilliant. And then suddenly, like, it'll be like Frog Stomp 982 off Instagram meets Ben and Chris, and he said that you're shit. And now, what have we done that's made us shit to you?
Yeah, let's talk about it. Like what? Yeah, what upset you so much?
And I suppose what's one thing that I've kind of, Ben, how much I love Silverchair, and I've seen all your UK shows, and I've been there since I was sort of 12 with a guitar, wanting to try and be like you guys. And the one thing that's always kind of a mystery to me is this unheard album that you guys have kind of recorded bits to and demoed up and stuff. And I know it's crazy, but you know what Led Zeppelin fans are like, and you know what Beatles fans are like. If they can ever get their hands on something, even if it isn't the finished product, it's a demo or a rough edit. Do you think there'll ever be a day that we as fans get to hear those unreleased tracks?
I don't. Yeah, I don't see. Yeah, I don't really. I don't know. My gut's telling me I don't really see that ever happening. That there are a lot of really great ideas. There was a couple of like, I guess, fully formed songs in the mix, but I probably weren't fully completed. Still had a bit of work to go. I don't know. I don't think so. I wouldn't. But who knows?
Keep those hard drives safe, because if
No
someone
one's got
breaks
the
in,
crystal
so if
ball.
someone breaks into your house and releases them, you got to be really careful now.
Yeah. Look, Chris is right. There was some. I when we first started that sixth record, like, I don't know, I definitely I was really excited by it. I thought some of the sounds and ideas were like, it was just so progressive and so cool, and it was really different for us. But I still felt like we were tapping into like that original Tomorrow, like jamming, like we were jamming as a band and coming up with these just great vibes. But yeah, they weren't. We needed a producer to help sculpt them into actual songs, because they just weren't songs. They were just kind of, ideas and vibes, and I can't see at the moment. I can't see them ever seeing the light of day. But you just, who knows? You don't know how you'll feel in 10 years. You don't know. Who knows? I doubt it, but Justin Bieber, never say never.
I swear you quoted him a few times on the last episode.
Yeah, well, it's just that thing, right? Like, you just don't know what life's going to throw at you. Like, you like, just think about, like, most people can relate to, like, where you were 15 years ago or 20 years ago or 10 years ago, or like, you just, things change and relationships change, and your mindset changes, and your priorities change, and who knows where we'll be in 10 years. We could be in exactly the same spot, or we might be the three of us might be in a different place with all of our relationships, and we might be like, oh, fuck it, just put them out there, like just let the fans have them. I don't know, who knows, but at the moment it's definitely not going anywhere.
There's a moment on the part 2 of the, is it Australia Today? Is that what the show's called? The 2-part
Australian
documentary.
Story.
Australian Story, sorry. And there's this really incredible kind of closing shot for the second episode where it's just normal. You're having a barbecue with your children and your family, and it's like I think it's like a garden area, but you just all at one of your houses, and it just feels really normal. And you've kind of got this life where there's nothing missing. You've got wives, you've got children, you're healthy now, you're in a good place. And it just felt really beautiful to see that you're, in this really nice place at this point. But there's part of me that was always like, I know that Ben and Chris didn't have the finale for Silverchair that they wanted. You must have surely wanted that final send-off tour where you walk off the stage and everyone knows it's one of your last ever shows, and you get that huge, ovation, and everyone's standing up, and you kind of like, that's it. It feels like closure. But seeing that episode of that Australian network show, it then changed my mind, and I was like, perhaps they aren't looking for that anymore. Perhaps they don't need the send-off. Perhaps the family and everything else is just, that's where they are in their life now. But does it feel like there's still unfinished business? Does it still feel like you could give it that final tour? I know it's a difficult one to answer, but as where you are today?
Look, it would have been nice to definitely, for a couple of reasons, definitely, I think, wrap up the band in a different way. I mean, if not for the fans, we wouldn't have had the career that we had. So it kind of would have been nice just to do something that might have been a bit more sort of a thank you towards the fans of the band. And I mean, mentally, it was quite hard just coming to terms with, essentially an indefinite hibernation. And it did feel a bit kind of like, I don't know, it all just faded to black type thing, but it wasn't, it didn't feel like it was, the chapter was closed and you could mentally just move on with your life. And it's definitely taken me a number of years to be able to sit comfortably with that idea. And the book definitely helped me massively in that sense.
What about you, Ben?
Yeah, look, I mean, the way the band was left, the three of us didn't have a clear conversation about finishing, to have a statement put out that we're in indefinite hibernation and just leave it at that. Like, it's really left up in the air, and it's not clear. And it was a really mental challenge. Like, I guess for me, for just not having that closure, like to sit down with Daniel and Chris and all of us kind of say, if it was coming from Daniel or if it was coming from Chris or me or whoever it was, is saying, hey, look, I don't want to do this anymore as a band, just to have that real clarity around it. Like, we didn't have that conversation never happened. So I mean, and we've kind of joked about this, like technically the band's still in indefinite hibernation. Like, we haven't
It's just a long one, yeah.
Yeah, we haven't officially said that the band's over. But yeah, look, I think the right way for the band to have finished, considering, our friendships and the experiences that we shared, like that's how I always imagined it, that that we'd go out in a blaze of glory, like do a big tour, and be arm in arm and celebrating what we'd achieved together. And that's, it's for ourselves, for the fans, for your mental state as well, to be able to close that off. So it has, I think Chris and I imagine we've both had that same struggle with it, not having that closure. And I think that was part of the reason for doing the book. And we mentioned that pretty early on, that's, hopefully that's, what it will help achieve mentally as well. And we've never, still to this day, we've never had that conversation. So I guess we, in a way, we had to take it into our own hands to give us both that kind of closure. But look, I think we spoke about this, Mark, on the first podcast. Like, the fear would be that magical spark that makes Silverchair so special isn't there anymore. That if the three of us did get together and we played music, that you'd just be like, if it was just a deflated balloon and we're just kind of like, oh, it's just we're not excited by it, or we're just not as passionate as we used to be, or there's that would be the fear for me, that if somehow that we could all come together and decide to do something, that it may be that maybe the magic wouldn't be there. But there definitely has been the cathartic process of the book, and even having these chats with lovely people like you and Chris and I. Obviously, we talk a lot and we kind of process stuff as well. Like, the whole process has definitely helped kind of be a bit of a bookend for that time in our lives.
I mean, there's a really nice bookend, like you said, and to wrap it all up in this book feels like a really good way of having some sort of closure for you guys, especially revisiting the highs and the lows and celebrating it through a book, which I never thought would happen. But it does, from my perspective as a fan, it does still feel like it isn't quite finished. It doesn't feel, do you know what the perfect would, being completely honest with you both, I don't need to see a picture of you guys on stage. If I don't need to see a picture, I don't need to see that. I don't need to be at the front hearing Emotion Sickness again. It'd be absolutely incredible. But if like Ben just said, if it wasn't right and it felt forced and you're going through the motions and I didn't get the feelings I got when I saw you 10, 15, 20 years ago, it would be like, oh, do you remember when Silverchair used to be amazing? But what I do want to, but what I really want to see, what I really want to see is just you three in a room or having a barbecue and knowing that all that crap's now water under the bridge. There's too much history. There's been too much love between you three to not have a really happy ending of you three just as mates, just having a drink or just being in each other's company and have been able to say the things that you've not been able to say for nearly 10 years. That's the sad part to see. And I'm just being honest. I'm not bringing it down. I'm just saying all I want to see, Ben, is you, Chris and Dan hugging it out and just being cool with each other, none of this animosity or negativity, and just that's all I want.
Look, that would be that'd be lovely. I think we could all benefit from that kind of outlook. And who knows? We may get there one day, we may not.
Ben, you're too quiet and I don't like it.
It's I guess, look, I mean, that'd be amazing. It really would be. And I said at and I think Chris and I may have discussed this during the process, and I said it at the Newcastle, the first launch in Newcastle for the book,
there's definitely a sentiment of the book that the book's an invitation.
It is. Yeah,
It
I finished it
it
and I
really
thought it's an olive branch, isn't it?
it really lean that like I keep repeating it. There's some tough stuff in there, but Chris and I really did want to be brutally honest about our experiences from our perspectives. But I think overall, like you know, it's it leans into the love, and it's a
Mm.
pretty big invitation. But it doesn't. Ultimately, it's about our the book is about our journey, and whatever the future holds for the relationship between the three of us. Like, I don't know. I really don't know. Like, if the day comes where the three of us can be in a room and um, be happy to all be together and laugh and reminisce, and hopefully that happens one day.
What would you? It's a tough one, but what do you think you need to say that would fix it? Is it all three of you saying something? Is there an apology needed? Is it just a case of putting everything to one side and just being yourselves again and being those naughty kids that were on tour that were trashing places and just having fun and wearing the same clothes every day? Is it just
It's
taking
probably a
stripping
little bit of
everything
all of
back,
that.
you know?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of all of that. Probably just, yeah. I mean, um, probably just, just listening.
Yeah,
Probably just start by listening.
that's the perfect response,
Yeah,
I can't lie.
yeah, and I think
Yeah,
look, and I do think there's you know, and it's probably from all three of us. I think there's some stuff that we would probably need help unpacking and
Yeah,
working through. Um, but it's not out of the question. Um, but I guess you just need to take that first step. And until you take that first step, it's yeah, you just it just will stay the same until we all kind of decide that we can do that.
surely I'm not forcing it or pushing it, but surely the release of a book where both of you have been so open and so honest, but it's so positive, and I do feel like it's you guys reaching your hand out now and saying, Dan, like, let's chat, let's just do something. Surely now is the time. 5 years ago, maybe not. Maybe Ben at your birthday was not the time to do it. But surely, if there's anything going to happen, it must be off the back of this book because, I'm sure Dan's aware the book's out. I'm sure he's aware. There must be part of him that wants to read and look into it and go down that kind of memory of nostalgia and revisit those times. Surely, if it's going to happen, it's going to be now.
yeah. Well, time will tell. there's, there's, there's. Yeah. I mean, yes, time will tell.
Surprise! Here's Dan. No, I'm joking. So what's happening now then, guys? I suppose you're halfway through the tour, is that right? I know you've probably got to get on flights soon and do some more promotion for the book. It's been #1, which is incredible. The response I've seen online has been amazing. The diehard fans are loving the fact that they've got this now, and the publicity's going great. Is it just to finish this tour and then take a bit of time out because you've been back on tour again?
Yeah.
See
So
the
we've got
family,
what have
eat
we got?
again, have nice food, do your normal
Brisbane.
things.
Yeah, Brisbane, Melbourne, Adelaide, and Hobart, Adelaide left to go. And the whole Q&A thing's been really um, it's been great. It's been nice, just sort of in conversation, talking about some things from the book, um, and and parts of our lives. But afterwards, yeah, just back to home life.
And that's good, isn't it? Surely just to spend time with the kids and just have normality. We're getting older. You can't stay up as late. You can't drink as many beers.
Yeah, it's definitely I think um I guess Chris and I spoke this morning. I think just the whole process, because I mean, even though I've been doing my music, like music for me is almost like a hobby. Like it's not what it was in Silverchair. I just do it because I love it. But I guess what the book has really done, and doing the Australian story, and all this, like national press, and if the book gets released internationally as well, which I think it's going to be, like there might be some international stuff too. Like you just forget what it's like to be thrust into the public eye at quite that level. So I mean, I can't talk for Chris, but it's definitely been not taxing, but just a reminder of the intensity that we must have endured, or maybe we just weren't as aware. I guess just maybe being a bit older and aware, like there's definitely been an intensity about it, that's been um, quite quite draining and taxing,
Yeah,
just on your
but
on
there's
your
definitely a personal, deeper, personal story that I guess we've um, lent into as well, which is rather taxing at times.
Yeah, not to say that it hasn't, like it's been enjoyable, right? Like it's still been an
Yeah, it has
enjoyable
been. It's been
experience,
extremely fun. Yeah,
but it's just a different, it's different to touring it if you were like playing music. But yeah, I think we both, like, say after the week or so that we've had in Sydney, and the show in Newcastle and Sydney, like I think we were both pretty excited to come home for a few days before we kick on, and just trying to catch up on sleep. And but yeah, look, it's still all very exciting.
I can see it now. There'll be this big announcement. Silverchair are back together. They're doing a final tour. After 2 nights, you'll be like, we can't do any more. We want to go home and drink cups of tea and be in bed by 9 o'clock. We're too tired to do a set list of 15 songs. But it's too much. We thought it was a good idea and everyone wanted it, but no, we just want to be at home.
Yeah.
Ben, was there anything left out of the book that you wish now you could go back in and put in?
I don't know if that's a leading question, Mark, but yes, there is.
What did you miss out putting in the book that would have been the
Well,
perfect thing?
there is one major thing that I think all of your listeners need to know, that that Mark himself was actually a contributor to the book. I'll give some background. So I had an idea early on when I spoke to Ali, that to have a fan involved, that would be really good, like to try and hone in on, like, maybe there's some like burning questions that fans would really like to know, that we could add to the book. And after our first podcast, Mark, then I thought Mark would be the perfect person to talk to Ali. So for those listening, Mark actually spoke to Ali and was part of the process of writing Love and Pain. Um, and then there was a small passage in the book, that was edited out, but then, stupid Ben, I'm putting my hand up. I'm completely fucked up. Mark should have been thanked in the acknowledgements, but he wasn't, and I felt extremely horrible about it. And anyway, this is me officially on your podcast saying I am so incredibly sorry, Mark. Your name should have been in that book because of your contribution, and I'm so sorry.
Don't worry, it's all water under the bridge. To know that I got to contribute and talk to you and to Ali and now Chris as a huge Silverchair fan, it would have been beautiful to have that, that bit of history and see my name in the book. But I felt part of the journey, and there's a million fans out there that would love that chance, and I got that. So when time's gone on and you can look back and you get over the initial shock or the upset or the anger, now it just feels fine, and it all feels really positive. And the fact that you're going to send me a check for $1 million to say sorry is just so kind. I still can't believe you're doing it. And the whole back cat of vinyl and all your drums and everything is so kind.
It's all in the mail.
He's good like that, isn't
mail.
he? He's wonderful.
It's amazing. It hasn't arrived yet. I keep getting told I'm getting a thank you package. It hasn't come yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
I'll send you the DHL code. It's coming.
Amazing. What I do, and it's my final question, and Ben, you've had this on the last podcast, but Chris, this is for you as well, is as the episode is all edited and the world is ready to listen, you get to choose the final song that's played on the podcast. Now, it doesn't have to be a Silverchair song. It can be a song that means something to you, a song that you absolutely love. And yes, Ben did choose a song by Led Zeppelin. But what's a song that you really adore that when I ask the question, and it can be any song by any band in the whole world, that means a lot to you, Chris, that you would love to be played after today's episode is all ready for the world to listen to?
I desperately want to know what the first song it is that popped into your head.
For me,
what's the first song that popped in your head?
It's probably a Wilco song.
Ooh.
And
I do put you on the spot. There's probably like 600 songs in your head now, going down to 100, down to 50. But what's the one that came to your heart before any other?
Wasn't Boob Scotch, was it, Chris?
No, it wasn't Boob Scotch. Huh?
He's got his phone out now. This is why he's not on camera. He's looking for his Spotify going, which one?
Yeah, look.
There must be one that popped straight in.
Yeah, like Hummingbird off A Ghost Is Born.
Is that your final answer?
Or, yeah, let's go Hummingbird.
Oh, lovely.
What about you, Ben? What would you, now you've got a second chance? Obviously, I think you picked, I can't remember one of the Led Zeppelin tracks. It was a classic and it was fucking awesome, but you get a round two.
I'm going to go something a little bit different, because I'm just loving this band at the moment. They're called King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, and the song's called Catching Smoke, and it's just so fucking cool. I don't know, I'm just obsessed with it. Like I love the band, and there's a lot of other songs that I love of theirs that I'm discovering at the moment. But that I keep coming back to that one song. It's just got a magic about it. I love it. Yeah. So Catching Smoke.
Is this an old band or a new band or a current band?
It's an Aussie band. They've been around for a fair while. It's just one of those, those bands that are kind of on the peripheries that you never kind of get into, and then for some reason, like there's a spark or something that just turns you onto them. And I had that with them like maybe like 6 months ago. Actually, I was doing a photo shoot with the guy that did.
We were. Yeah.
Yeah, so he put me onto them. Yeah, a guy called McClay in Australia, who I guess is like he's the go-to guy in Australia and even internationally for rock photography. He still uses film. He's just a good guy. Super passionate about music, and the first time, like I caught up with him a couple of years ago, and he kind of told me about. That he was really psyched on King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, and I think he's done a lot of work with them. But yeah, he just every time I see him, he just kind of pumps the music, and yeah, so I just had that moment with Maclay. Like I just had that spark where, I just heard a couple of songs. I was like, what am I doing? This band's bloody awesome. And I've just taken a deep dive, but yeah, they're really cool. But that one song in particular is that's the standout for me. But until I'll keep the journey going and see what else I can find.
It's not the easiest band name to remember, but I've written it down, and what I'll end up doing now is listening to it this week before I edit it. I'll put it into the episode, and I'll be like, fucking hell, this is awesome. And then probably spend the next 2 weeks in a rabbit hole just listening to all their stuff, because Chris Wilco are incredible, and a band that I've listened to for years, but I've never even heard this band.
Yeah, probably one of my all-time favourite bands.
Yeah, absolutely awesome. Well, guys, this comes to a beautiful end of the episode, which has been just over an hour. So I'm very grateful for your time, and I know how busy you are, and I know there's lots of people that would love you to take the time to go on their show. And I've had you now twice, Ben, and Chris. It's been an honor to have you on. So I really do hope you understand and appreciate just how much I've wanted to speak to you guys and have you on this podcast, and how much it means to me. It really is a genuine dream come true. So thank you both.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
And good luck with the rest of the book tour. And yeah, I don't know what the future holds. I speak to you a lot, Ben, on message outside of the podcast stuff. And yeah, you've really embraced my life, and I can't thank you enough for your generosity and kindness and making this happen. So I'm really looking forward to the fans listening to this as a follow-up to our single episode. And Chris, I hope one day our paths connect, that internationally you're doing a book tour or something, and we can sit down and have a cup of tea and, enjoy a quiet moment and not be rock and roll at all.
That'd be great.
Maybe we'll be crazy and have a sandwich or something.
maybe we can obviously we'll stay in touch, Mark, but maybe if we get over to the UK for the book, we can get together, the three of us, and celebrate when the Mark and Me podcast is hit number 1.
That would be awesome, because what we'll do is we'll do a live Q&A. I'll host it, and then we'll record it, and that'll be the one that, that's the official first number 1 instead of number 2 with Biffy Clyro.
Love it. I love it.
Right, guys, I'll let you get back to family time and probably preparing for more press. But thank you so much, guys. And yeah, Ben, I'll stay in touch. And Chris, I hope we kind of get to speak again another time.
No doubt.
All right, legend. See you, mate.
See you later, guys. So there it is. There's my interview with me, Chris, and Ben from the amazing Silverchair. Genuinely, I still pinch myself now that I get to text Ben, and we're like friends. We talk a lot. He's an amazing guy, and so is Chris, and it's such a delight to have them in my life and to know how much of an impact they had on me musically, creatively, and I'm really, really proud of this one. I want to say now a massive thank you to Ben and Chris for taking the time during this book tour to come on the Mark and Me podcast. They hadn't done much press in the UK, so it's an absolute huge privilege for me to have any time with you guys, and it isn't taken for granted, so thank you so much. And as you heard, nearly, almost over the line was a quote that was going to be made into the book, and a thank you from Ben to me. It didn't make it to the final print, but I know it was there. I know the memories were there, and it means so much to me. And if you're listening to this, go and listen to the audiobook or buy a hard copy of it, because it's absolutely brilliant. It's my book of the year, and it's called Love and Pain. And truly, if you're a fan of music, you'll be blown away just how open, how honest they are, and it's just a beautiful read. If you've enjoyed today's episode, there are over 320 episodes right now with all different guests from all different walks of life available on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts. So why not dive in deep and find a guest that you might love? I truly believe I cater for everyone. There's artists, bands, musicians, actors, directors, and I think everybody on there is really interesting and very different from the previous guest. So let me know if you dive in. Let me know if you find a new favourite episode, and I always take the time to read and reply to every message I get. All the links are on markandme.com, so there's Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Please let me know what you think of today's episode or any of the previous episodes, because it really, really means a lot. I have a Patreon page as well, so if you want to support the podcast and help keep this podcast going, there's a link on markandme.com, and each and every month to thank you, you'll have exclusive episodes, you'll have badges, stickers, lots of merch sent to you, loads of prizes, loads of competitions, and so much more. And if you're listening today, all I ask in return to keep this podcast going is to share it. So if you're on Twitter right now, hit the retweet button. If you're on Instagram, hit the like button. And if you're on Facebook, why not hit the share button? It goes a huge long way to help this podcast grow. I'm a one-man team and appreciate any support. Right, I'll be back in only a few days' time with another brand new episode. Thanks again to Silverchair for making the time to come on the podcast. And until next time, look after yourself, take care, listen to Silverchair, and I'll speak to you all very soon.
His goal in life was to be an echo, riding alone, town after town, toll after toll, a thick bayonet through the great southwest to forget her. She appears in his dreams, but in his car and in his arms, a dream could mean anything. A cheap sunset on a television set could upset her, but he never could. Remember to remember me, standing still in your past, floating fast like a hummingbird. His goal in life was to be an echo, a type of sound that floats around and then back down like a feather. But in the deep chrome canyons of the loudest Manhattans, no one could hear him or anything. So he slept on a mountain in a sleeping bag underneath the stars. He would lie awake and count them. And the great fountain spray of the great Milky Way would never let him die alone. Remember